Hello, love. We are here with Leah Ackerman today. This is episode 2 of Floating on a Cloud podcast. Spirit gave me the name of Floating on a Cloud because it is that feeling that you get, at least for me, when you are connecting with your own divine guidance. And the whole intention of having this conversation with hundreds of men and women is to really normalize listening to your divine guidance, your intuition, that gut feeling, following that, listening, allowing, ask, receive, trust, and act in your own words, in your own time, in your own way. And we are going to chat today with Leah Ackerman. She is so amazing and I love her so much. We have known each other in various capacities. And Leah is an intuitive empath who has stepped into her own and is embracing her psychic abilities more and more all the time. She is a master of emotional indicators. That's how at least the universe sees her, and she's owning it, I think, now too. An efficient analyzer with an antenna that receives information with do you call your antenna your spidey senses? Is that what
I
you
do.
with the intent to share with those who are looking for guidance, alignment, and support? Leah shared with me that she is often referred to as a ray of sunshine, and her middle name happens to be Ray. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really flattered and humbled that you'd invite me to be here.
Yes, and bear with us all because it's episode 2. So I am getting used to the flow of this, but it has been asked of me for the last 3 years to start a podcast, and it just feels like now's the time. So here we are chatting about it. So from your introduction, Leah, I am guessing that since you're like, you're stepping more and more into your psychic abilities and owning more of their intuitive empath, I'm guessing that you haven't always been this way and you haven't always been listening to that divine guidance. So talk to me about a time when you weren't listening to that divine guidance.
Yeah. So, there's been many, many, many times I feel like I didn't really, well, to be honest with you, I didn't even understand it was divine guidance until probably the last few years. But if I'm pulling just one major example, it's definitely going to be my experience working in the corporate sector. So went to business school, graduated, had the cushy corporate job. And I was in there about 5 years, had the toxic boss, had just these really awful experiences to where I was getting really depressed, lots of anxiety. I grew up with a mom who was very depressed, manic depressive, bipolar, and now is turning schizophrenic as her life goes on. So I was around that my whole life. So I just sort of chalked myself up to being an anxious, depressed person. And about that time, I was fortunate enough to find and actually a fellow intuitive. And I didn't, to be honest with you, I wasn't aware at that time that I was intuitive. Did I know that like sometimes I could I knew things and had a sense of knowing before they happened. I was really good at playing blackjack because I could go off of feel and not by numbers. Like, to be honest, I'm not a numbers person. So I'm that person you don't want at the table because I think I screw up the odds for everybody else because I can feel what's coming down. So I always had these little instances and, I saw spirit as a kid and I thought I was dreaming, like all these examples, but I never really reconciled it all until I met a therapist who was highly spiritual and started to then pick up on like, have you ever looked at this? And started to do a more like holistic, referring me to other energy workers. And it really started like peeling back the layers like an onion. So to divert back to the example of where I was not living in by divine guidance is really probably my entire life, And the straw that broke the camel's back for me was being in this corporate job that I thought was successful, right? That was the epitome of success to me, was getting the dream job on paper and being in it for almost 5 years and realizing that I was miserable to the point of, I remember having a conversation with somebody going, if this is the way life is supposed to be, if this is adulting, I don't want to do it anymore. Like this shouldn't be how life is. And anyways, I had a side business. I come from a direct sales background, and I had been doing that, and it brought me so much joy, and I was seeing it bring other people joy, but I never thought that it could be a career, because I worked a job that I hated. I watched two parents work jobs that they hated. My only examples in life were people miserable at their jobs. So I thought that's what you're supposed to do, as many people do.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I kept getting diverted back to taking my side hustle full time. And it scared the hell out of me, to be honest, because I never thought that, that would be a career, or, it being 100% commission-based, sales-based position. To fall on that was really scary. But things kept happening that were undeniable. And when I would say yes and do that, then it felt like a little bit of relief until the next thing would come along, and I'd get all stressed and anxious. And then the next puzzle piece would fall, and then it felt like a relief. And then I started to go, maybe I could just keep moving in this direction and just be relieved my whole life. Maybe that's something to consider. And that's sort of, the rest is history there.
You were talking about your corporate job. So what was it like at those times when you weren't listening to your divine guidance and you're just, what did that feel like for you? And I do that because I feel like you were like hitting a brick wall, kind of.
Yeah. And, I'm so sensitive to energies, and probably didn't ground myself enough that like sometimes getting back to that place will get a little emotional. So
it's okay.
Warning, if you are also a sympathetic or empathetic crier. But really, as I mentioned, I mean, I had those moments where, driving home from work, I remember I live in the Midwest. I remember there being a especially snowy, icy night, and driving and thinking like, if I just turned the wheel into that tree or into that fence, what would happen? Or how many Tylenol, because I didn't have like anything, hard drugs in my house. So I was like, how much Tylenol could I take to end it? Like little thoughts like that, which are not my nature. And I think that's why I cry now, is because what a shame, to have somebody live in that place.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect to cry.
You're talking to me and you don't expect to cry. Come on now.
What was I thinking? But also, and that was the lowest of the low. And I think just day to day too, and kind of what led up to that was a lot of days of, having, being in situations and almost, and I don't, and part of it is like, you never want to play the victim. So I do take accountability for a lot of me attracting in some of that energy too, but also having lived a really difficult childhood and adolescence as well, and being thrown into all these situations where I experienced a lot of hardship, really difficult feelings. So I think getting to that point with this job, it was all coming to a head for me of all these negative experiences. And I did have a lot of joy as a kid too, but definitely more sorrows and hardship and heartache. Finally it was just the culmination of it all. And then realizing like I felt trapped. Like every day I walked into that place and it felt like I was going to prison. It felt like, I was bullied in high school as well. And I did have days like that in high school also, where it felt like I was like being let off to slaughter, like when I would get there. Because I had a toxic boss, was not supportive, coworkers that most of them are really fantastic, but you never want to like get too deep into the office politics with other people. And so I just felt very alone, very, very alone. And also I did not see room for progression at all in terms of career moves. So it just felt like the universe kept dishing up these signs of why I shouldn't be there anymore. And I kept fighting it. So if you've ever felt that resistance before, that's what it felt like every single day.
I did not know about you driving and thinking of ways to no longer be here.
Right. Yeah.
I did not know that. And did you know that about me? That I did that as well?
Yeah.
It was literally, I had planned out how to, but the thing that kept coming to mind, what's so interesting is when you're talking about just driving, and it's things that like, we know that we really don't want to end our lives,
Right.
but it's that we no longer want to live this way anymore.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's a distinct difference, and it's this, I recently watched Soul on Disney, and there is a point where they're talking about the lost soul, and they're like, there's this guy that like was looking down at himself, and he's like doing this like computer and analysis work, and all of a sudden the soul jumps back into the body and is like, what am I doing here? No, oh my God, it's time to live.
Yes.
Like it's like that moment that you're like, you're really like, feel like you're lost, tired, worn out, pulled in many different directions. You are just trudging through life. And it's like, and for people who are waking up and who have this sense of, I have a soul, and it's like, it's being squashed and something has to give type of feeling. It's just like something has to give, or it's not worth being here. And I did not know that about you. We all the conversations we've had, we have not talked about it. And that's just so interesting. And I just had to add this, like, after like writing out the first book and following all my little breadcrumbs, what I noticed was, and I feel like this is what you're saying too, so I just kind of wanted to tie it together, that when you aren't listening to your divine guidance, you get further and further away from who you really are.
Yes.
So it's that like the negative emotional steps downward spiral to depression, hatred, self-loathing, just self-deprecating thoughts of just, unworthiness, all the things, because you're gotten so far away from your soul and who you are at a core being, that you're like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Right.
I cannot be this person anymore. Like, I have to work my way back, and working your way back is following those little breadcrumbs of like, okay, I'm starting to see this isn't working, and that's not working, and this isn't working, and feeling all the resistance. But I think feeling the resistance is also good, because you're actually feeling something now, instead of numbing yourself to, or the acceptance of, well, life is shit and this is what it's going to be. Right. Does that, because I was just trying to tie it all together of what you were saying. Is that accurate, or do you have a different take on that?
No, I think that's accurate. I know, we've talked a lot about, I know a lot of times you talk about the little girl, right? Or the little boy, I suppose whatever your situation is. And that being, how you start out, just being pure love and unjaded and raw. And then these experiences and things happen to you and you end up where you are. And I started, very young abuse in my house, like when I was 5. So I don't think I really ever got much of a chance to meet her. And so at 28, 27, when I was finally had just had it, I think I was really like meeting myself for the first time, truly. And here we are, I just turned 33, so it's been 5-6 years now of getting to know me. And again, it feels like peeling off layers. It feels like you're wearing a bunch of coats, right? And then it's like something happens and I'm like, oh, okay, take off a layer, take off a layer, to the point now where I'm actually physically in my body again. And now, this next chapter for me is all about reconnecting with my physical body. So that's what I've been working on now. But
that's just so interesting, isn't that? So
energetic coats.
Yes. So Spirit shared, so okay, lots of thoughts happening.
We buzz when we get together. Like,
spidey senses all over the place. Yeah. Okay, where was I heading with this? It's just so interesting how you started waking up at 28. I did not know this. I did not know our parallels. I was 27, 28 as well. And then I ended up getting divorced. You divorced your work. I divorced my ex-husband. There's some sort of change that happened.
Honestly, it felt, I've been through very horrendous breakups, and that's exactly what it felt like. So I think it relates. Yeah.
And when you're talking about being back in your body, so I focused so much before I was awake. I focused so much on my body and working out and eating right, or obsessed about it that I would like limit my caloric intake. And it was like how strong my abs were. I was a complete bee like in college because I remember a time that I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but I have like had to go back and forgive myself for this. There I was drinking and a woman was hitting on my ex-husband, and I went up and I slapped her tummy because it was large and mine was like abs, and I was like pointing out that she wasn't perfect. And I was like, I have been so like sorry for that moment, and I could never like see that woman because I don't even know who she was. And I was like, wow, that woman that I was so obsessed with her body that I was like demeaning others. And then I started waking up and focused so much on my spiritual that then it was just last year that I realized that my body is the home of my soul. Yes, my body is the home of my soul. And there was this image that, and I've shared it with you, how spirit came in and was like energetically plugging in all these cords and like we're a circuit board and stuff. And that really helped to have my soul come back into my body. But then it's kind of like, is it Mulan? When like the reflection song, like when will my reflections show like who I truly am or who I am or something like this. So it's like coming back into your body and waking up to a whole new you. And I didn't realize that there was the parallel with that. So I just had to.
Right. I don't know what it is. I mean, from my background professionally is in sexual health and wellness, and you go through a different form of puberty at like 25. And so I talked to a lot of women, because I work primarily with women, that have these sexual awakenings, spiritual awakenings, body things that kind of open their eyes to things are between like 25 to 28, 29. So I don't know if it's the hormones. I have no idea, but I know other people that have had spiritual awakenings. One of which, as someone close to me is like, I think she said 26 to 27. So I'm not sure what it is about that time.
Yeah. So things happen, you start waking up. What happens when you do start listening to that divine guidance, and what does that feel like?
Well, at first, and even now a little bit, it feels like, especially leaving a regular old job to be 100% self-employed, which is something I'd never done before. There always was that safety net, especially when it came to financial security or health insurance, or, there's something stable about that. It felt like the safety net was just gone. At the time, I was fortunate enough that I had a partner that, if things didn't go well, we at least had one income that could cover bills until I figured it out. But it felt like the safety net was ripped out, and then I was free falling. And it wasn't until actually, being in direct sales, one of my leaders on the team gifted me a month with a quote business coach. And it's funny because I think it's a similar story to how you started out, where you're like, I'm a business coach. And it's like, you're actually an intuitive disguised as a business coach, whatever you got to do to like dip your toes in the water.
Yes.
Do it that way. And that's my interpretation. But she taught me all about law of attraction. And that was a game changer. I had never heard of universal law. Every day it was like, oh God, are the bills going to get paid? Is someone going to cancel on me? And I was so fixated on the negative stuff. And then it was, the wins were great, but like still negative stuff happened all the time. She like helped me shift. And so to answer your question, once I learned about universal law, which is a rabbit hole of like receiving divine guidance and just trusting and allowing and like all that, it feels like there's a safety net again. Like that's how I feel. And that's what 2020 felt like. And, I think for a lot of people, the safety net got ripped out. So my partner with that steady job was laid off. And I had my oh crap moment and realized, the next day, like, oh, I'm still here. He's still here. I still feel okay. I'm calm because I just kept going back to what's next. What should I, and listening and asking, like, what should I do next? Thank you so much. The bills are always paid. Don't ask me how sometimes. When I was first starting out, I remember a month distinctly, we had an ice storm. I had 13 parties scheduled, 3 of which had immediate family members die unexpectedly. We had an ice storm on the week that I had about 6 of them booked. I went from 13 parties to like 2 or 3, and people would call me and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Freaking out. And this was my first December in business. And then like somebody calls and needs $1,000 order and like this happened and just, it's like, it's always taken care of. So what am I freaking out about all the time? And Sarah, you know this, every once in a while I have a moment where I'm like, oh God, and I text you, oh God, oh no. And then I go back to like, and dial back in, you're fine. Like,
yes.
And then I laugh, but yeah, it feels like the safety net is back, and that's a good feeling. And I would wish for everyone to feel safe all the time. That's I really do.
I did not know all of these things. So my thing is I even created a song for my girls around safety. And that is my prayer for them every night, is that they feel safe and comforted in their own beds.
Oh, I should have you sing it for me and record it. And then my bedtime lullaby.
It's to the tune of Lullaby and Goodnight, like that one. So, and when you're talking about your safety net and it was your job, and I wrote down here a shift in your thoughts to source, creator, spirit. Mm-hmm. And you said law of attraction, which it could universal law. So I mean, all words kind of interchange. When you start understanding the universe, it's not just religion or just science. It's all intermingled. So, and when you're talking about law of attraction and that, like, your business intuitive coach.
Yeah.
I remember just starting to wake up and realize that I no longer, I didn't want to die and that I deserve to live. And Spirit even said to not die because you have stuff to do here. So let's not have that happen, Sarah, like wake up type of thing. And then a gentleman at work, he was an intern that I hired. I was a Parks and Rec director. I know, I think I've told you that before. Oh my, I can't watch Parks and Rec. And he was an intern, and he's like, hey, I went through a divorce. He was kind of like, he was like going back to school, like he was like a little bit older and stuff. And he's like, hey, I went through a divorce, and someone gave me this book. I think that you would really enjoy it now. And it was The Secret. And I remember reading it. I was laying on my black pleather couch that I got at some like cheap store. And I was laying there and I was reading it. And my not quite ex-husband is like sitting over in the recliner here. And I'm reading this and I'm like, I can create my life. Shut up. Like, I was like, I put it down. I'm like, I'm changing my entire life. I'm like, I don't have to be here. I don't have to be married. Like, holy woo. I was like, I can do this. And so when you're like, you were just learning the law of attraction, that's what made me.
I feel like if someone was listening or watching this and going like, where do I start? I want to get in on this. It's like, yeah, learn about that The Four Agreements, the law,
Yep. I was going to say that, and then the next book that changed, it was like The Secret. And then, and then I had like a whole stack, which some of them are here, of books that I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why did I choose to marry someone that I did not love?
Yes.
Why did I want to kill myself? Why did I not it was just this whole thing. But then there was somebody that taught me, so I'm totally interrupted you. And someone shared with me, you cannot solve the problem with the same thought process that created it. So although we're talking about like reading these books, I think also what is beneficial is if you hire somebody to coach you, mentor you, have therapy with, who has some similar interests but doesn't have a vested interest in you and your well-being. So it's different than talking to like friends or family, and has this outside point of view that can give you direction on where you want to go, and helps you solve the problem with a different thought process. Because when we're reading books or listening to things, we're still thinking about it from our own well-being, our own non-well-being, so.
I agree. And also they're almost like your accountability buddy too, because you can read all these great books, mine, she taught me law of attraction affirmations. I didn't read, in fact, I still have never read The Secret, to be honest with you. Cause I feel like I know it, like I don't need to, I get it. I'm on board. Like I get it. But the one that was the game changer for me, and this is a little less woo-woo, more contemporary, is You Are a Badass. And I sat.
Yes, I have that. You are. Yes.
I have I don't know how many copies, because every time I go to a garage sale and it's a quarter, I'm like, why? How dare you? This is worth its weight in gold. Okay. And I buy it, and then I squirrel it, and then I gift it. Anyways. So
I love it.
I wept in bed because I was like, she gets me. But the thing is I'd wake up the next day and all the same reality is there. And unless I actively change, and it's just like having a personal trainer or a dietitian working with you, if they're not there policing your carbon sugar intake and your weights and making sure your proper form and the cardio and whatever, you just revert back to your bad habits or old energy ways and whatnot. It's so, and it is as easy as making the decision to do it. But I tell you, there are times when you are triggered, and I swear the universe tests us to be like, okay, how are you doing? I'm going to throw you like a little curveball today. So anyways, I do, to your point, it is so much helpful to have an accountability buddy, if you will, or someone that's teaching you something and is actually, I want to say holding your hand through it, but at least checking in on you to make sure that you're actively working and changing. And it's, like you said, not someone who's going to necessarily, you're paying them to kick your butt if you need it, you're not, your spouse isn't going to necessarily do that. They might want to, but they know it's going to.
I know. Every time I've asked Craig to help, hold me accountable to something, he may do it for an hour, and then he's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Doing this.
It's too much. It's easier that way. Yeah.
And then he doesn't ask me to do it because he knows I'm going to be all over his butt all the time, because that's what I'm like, so did you make that call yet? Did you make this? Did you call? Did you? And he's always like, you're not my coach, you're my wife. And that's also you don't really want, I didn't turn to any of my family members for guidance, because I want them to be that role. I also, in the course of 8 years, whatever I've been in business, I used to want to be people's friends because I wanted to have that friendship. And now I would rather see someone living their soul's calling and listening to their divine guidance, being their best self, their truest self, than go sip coffee and hang out with you. We can do that at some point, but I'd rather you be fulfilled rather than just be a friend. And so, having somebody who doesn't have that vested interest is, I think, key. So,
that's a good point too. I feel like throughout this transformation, it felt so good, but at the same time, I lost touch with a lot of people. And hindsight's always 20/20, as I say. And you start to look at how those folks, and I wish them well. And some I'm still in friendly, casual contact with, but they're not in the inner circle anymore like they used to. It's like they were living lives that were so out of alignment that it just was not fostering an environment for me to be close with them and be in alignment for myself. So, before Grant, I was attracting all kinds of terrible men into my life, and they're good people. It's just like they were emotionally unavailable, and I was like throwing my self-worth into my relationships at that point, and whatever went on.
Well,
But
yeah, and based on law of attraction, that's where we were, like you may have not been emotionally available. I may not have been emotionally available. I mean, like I was hiding who I truly was in my in my first marriage. So was he. Like he was like wanting to have some sort of career, but really he wanted to be a farmer, and I'm like, I said to him when I left, I was like, I want somebody for you who is super excited about riding in a combine, hauling grain, like being there with you. I'm not that person. I'm going to end up feeling resentful towards you and hating you if I stay with you for like the next 30, 40 years of my life. I don't want that. Like, I want to continue loving you as a human being, but I'm going to resent you if I have to like haul grain. And so I bid you adieu. So, I mean, it's where we're at. It's law of attraction,
Right,
so
exactly. But anyways.
Yeah. So traveling down this path of listening to your divine guidance, a lot of people ask me, how do you know the difference between a thought that you're thinking and a thought that you are receiving? That is probably the number one question that I get. What would you say? How would you answer that question?
I've asked you this question.
I know you have.
So I think the first telltale signs are like when you receive information, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it is like, it might be a question in question form. However, it's like this sense of just like that it's like a standalone thought. Whereas when you have your own thoughts, it's like this rabbit hole of like, like a stream of consciousness almost of like, I'm going to do this and that and that and that and that and that and that. And at least for me, that's not how I'm communicated with from spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, source.
Yeah.
And so I even for a while there I thought I was just getting really impulsive, which coming from a family with mental illness, and I have completely different appreciation for that now than I did, but I always saw this really impulsive, sometimes violent outbursts and thought, well, God, now I'm just a kookaroo, like I'm just being impulsive, but the impulses always seem to turn out well, whereas the other ones that I'd lived with before were not. And I started to see I'm getting these thoughts. And like, even this morning, I told Sarah, I'm just feeling a little off, did my grounding, my journaling, channeled a little bit for messages for myself. And it brought me to a fear-based thought from a long, long time ago into a weird one-off situation a long time ago to where I am right now. And so for me, it's the contrast of before what was happening to now what was happening. And so for somebody that's just starting out, contrast might be something to pay attention to. If you're in a situation and you have this really contrasting thought, and the thought might be a little scary, but like it feels good, it's kind of exciting, like that's something to pay attention to. Also, when I was getting all of these, I asked, Sarah, I was like, how do I know if this is me thinking this or spirit? And you're like, well, maybe you should just ask it to come through differently. So I asked Spirit, I said, Spirit, thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful guidance and information with me. When you come through, will you please make it sound like a distinct voice that's not mine? I have a very high-pitched baby voice, in case you hadn't noticed. At 33 years old, I still have people call and ask to talk to my parents on the phone. When I was a manager, I'd be like, I'm the manager on duty. How can I help? No, really, I need to speak to the real manager. Is he there? And I'm just like, anyways. Now
I'm a successful businesswoman.
Yeah. I have a 6-figure business. I remember being at a networking event one time and some guy, I basically like did the little, oh, you're so cute kind of thing on my head. And I just went, show me your profit and loss and I'll show you mine. I remember, Matt, mister. He was like, whoa, okay. I mean, you just have moments like that where you're just like, no F's left to give because I don't care. Supported by the things that matter, source, universe, my loved ones. So anyways, I digress. I had to ask Spirit to give me another contrast. So when Spirit comes through, it's literally like a Morgan Freeman voice. Like
maybe it is Morgan Freeman.
Contrast to mine, like James Earl Jones talking to me all day long, I get this deep, it's like a deep, or it's just this like sense of knowing, like you just know the sky is blue and water is wet. I just know certain things. And I'm learning more and more, when I started, speaking with Sarah, it was about, emotional indicators and why have I been feeling all my feelings and been called all these negative things related to my emotions. You guys have already seen me cry once today, like I'm very highly sensitive. And always in school, it was at parent-teacher conferences, I always remember my mom coming home and being like, well, you got straight A's again, but they told me that you're really sensitive and you're emotional. So it was like, that was always the but. You're doing well, but. And so to have now this gift and business around emotions, that was really scary, I think, in part where there was so much resistance. But now it's just this sense of just knowing, like I just know when I am to do things, and it comes from something outside of me. And I'm learning now that it's more analytical than just I feel feelings and then I just share what the feelings are. It's like people can walk into a room and I can nitpick them apart. I don't want to, but like if asked, I could be like, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And if you did this, and this. And so I'm learning that I'm only allowed to do that when it's welcome. Mm-hmm. And I'm only allowed to offer things up if I can also present some kind of solution. So that's what I'm learning.
Yes. As we are beginning to listen to our divine guidance in all sorts of ways, we get those impulses and those pushes. And sometimes when I first started, it was, I was a medium. So there was someone who had passed who would be standing like right beside me, talking to me, to whomever. Now I asked that to change. And so now I just connect directly to the other person's soul. And so at some time I was at a conference and, or a weekend mastermind, and someone's dead father was behind me and literally like pushed me. And I was like this, and I was like, so I'm supposed to tell and she started crying and left for the whole rest of the day. And the leader was like, why did you do that? She didn't ask for that. And I'm like, I didn't ask for that. Like did you see me uncomfortably? But I have had to learn, just like what you're saying, is getting the person's conscious opinion or permission, being like, hey, I've got some insight for you. And so would you like to have that insight, or would you like me to give you some feedback on that? That is so helpful, because then the conscious mind is like, oh, and I know I'm telling you something, but I also want to tell the listeners that, because I feel like as you are waking up, the newly awakened starts to talk to every single person about their awakening. And it can be a little bit like, I didn't ask for that opinion. Thank you very much. And then you might get some resistance. And then because of that resistance, you might shut yourself off again and be like, no, I just can't share. But that's not at all. It's just giving the other person's awareness and permission, first and foremost, that, hey, I've got this insight. And that's really all that it takes.
Right. And I'm learning detachment also for like, it's folks in my environment where if they just did this one little tweak, think about how much better life would be, right? But if they're not going, hey, Leah, would you share what you think about this with me? And I just volunteer it up, it's not received in the same way, as you said.
Mhm.
And then I get resentful, like human Leah is like, well, if you don't show from the moon, you know, it would be a lot better. And then I almost get resentful because it's affecting my quality of life now because I'm grumpy about it. So I'm learning detachment also, that, you
Yep.
know, once it's shared, like it's up to them. Like, and we've talked about this before, you know, allowing people to show up really as they are.
Yeah.
And then reconciling.
Just because we can see the best version and that soul is just like in your face, and they're not showing up as that. I've had to learn it the hard way that it's not my responsibility to change you or even guide you. Like, really, I know I've said this. I listened to the Art of Allowing CD of Abraham Esther Hicks probably 80 times in a few months. Every time I had a wedding, I would pop it in. I used to officiate weddings, and I would drive to the wedding and I would listen to it. And at this time, Craig and I were at each other and just not getting along. And I was like, what do I need to do? Do I need to share a book with him? Do I need to change him? I'm moving in the right direction. Yeah. Because I'm obviously perfect and I'm this enlightened being and he is not. And so I'm laughing because I'm sure this has happened to other people, but I laugh now because I'm like, I wasn't like, if I'm having the struggle, then I'm also like, I'm part of the issue, you know? And so allowing him to do whatever he wants to do and show up however he wants to show up, and when and if he wants to, you know, row his own boat, then I'll watch from the side and be like, good job, that's how you do it. Not trying to row his own boat. And so the art of allowing was key. I remember driving home and I'd be like, oh, Spirit, what is it? What do I need to do? And the Spirit's like, allow. You've only listened to it about 80 times, Sarah Sparks. Sometimes we have to be like, you know.
I know I do that in love. I do that in business. Like, I'm like, why isn't this, you know, I do, you know, business coaching and with these women in the same business as me. And it's like, you know, there's certain just facts, like these are things that you have to do if you're going to have any kind of business. And they're like, but, and I'm just like, oh, like what, you know? And so I just go, well, these are the steps. Like, you know, I'm doing all I can to support you, and it's your choice what you do with it or not.
What has really helped you to trust that divine guidance, that thought, that feeling, that emotion?
You know that this was, I don't know if the trust or the allow step has been kind of like, you know, it's like they go back and forth. I asked for basically grand gestures. Like if I am to trust you, Spirit, I want no question about whether this was circumstantial or there were other factors at play that resulted in this. I want grand gestures. And I don't know if you remember the day we had a call, and I may have gotten emotional on the call as I do, but I remember going, my business isn't going the way I want it to be. And again, I'm guilty of playing the comparison game sometimes. You know, people, I should be making more. I should be doing, you know, whatever, which again, you guys, if you're doing this to yourself, please reconsider, because this is a rabbit hole of negativity that brings nothing but more negativity. So I was talking to you about, how do I know that this is going to support me? And how am I know that I'm always taken care of? And this was about the time I'd asked the universe for grand gestures to make sure that I knew it was the universe and nothing or no one else. And I get a phone call that a family friend had passed away and she was leaving me $25,000. I mean, I don't know, that's a pretty grand gesture. I'm not used to receiving $25,000 checks yet. That will be happening, but we'll put it out there. So I mean, that was, in a small example, but yeah, that's the way I went about it, grand gestures. Now, again, spirit likes to communicate with me in contrast. So that's a wonderful grand gesture. But then there's also times where spirit will go, well, you're being negative, so I'm going to just wipe your whole calendar clean and make you go, where's money going to come in from this month? And then make you scramble a little bit before you remember, oh yeah, I can just manifest things. And then I go, okay, I want to work this day, this day, this day, this day. And then before you know it, phone calls, text messages, emails, whatever, boop, 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 boop. And it's like within sometimes hours or less, it's fine. And it's like nothing ever happened. So be careful what you wish for is what
I had several.
Be careful what you ask for is a better way to say that.
Yesterday on 2 one-on-one calls, Spirit had me ask the clients, what is it that you really want? Talk to me about what it is that you really want. And they were really talking about what it is that they really want. And I said, so I just repeated it back like you've experienced. And I'm like, so you want 24/7 alone time, like that, because that's what she was talking about. Oh. I said, so if it is, you have husband and children, so what you're saying is you don't want your children and husband around anymore. So there could be consequences.
Yes.
To that. Are you okay with that? And she's like, oh no, that's not what I mean at all. I said, okay, then let's create something different. Like, so being aware of how powerful our thoughts are, our feelings are, and what you're asking for can also play a role in how you're trusting, if you're allowing, what you're receiving. So yeah, like just what you're saying is just be aware of what you're really asking for.
I had a moment where I was convinced I had willed the pandemic to happen because I was like, I'm tired. I need a break.
It's okay.
Everything shuts down. And I'm like, what now?
I know. Like, do you know how many like clients that were coming? I mean, you have your own clients.
Everyone was asking for a break.
Yes, collectively everybody was. And I even was joking around. I looked up at a sign that I made that hangs above the back door downstairs. And it says home with you. And it's, oh, home with you. And I was like, I didn't mean it literally. We could go out and still be with each other.
We don't want to feel sick and dying. We want just like a break.
Yeah. Okay. So people also ask me, how do I receive? And when I am teaching people how to listen to their divine guidance, people turn it around and are like, but I don't, after like working with me for X amount of months and sessions and all the things, but I don't receive like you do. So I want to have conversations about how everybody else receives. So it might not just be Sarah closing her eyes and receiving audibly, because that's how I do. So you are an emotional indicator. So that I would assume that you have some sort of feeling or maybe a body sign or something. So talk to me about like, how do you receive?
Sure. So it changes and it's different. And I'm still, I feel like this is still a journey. So I imagine this will continue to evolve. But what I didn't know until, within the last couple of years is I am constantly like, that's how I see the physical world, but also how I'm receiving information from sources through emotions. So I mentioned I had a rough upbringing, never stability or safety at home. I spent a lot of time in other people's homes, as like a break from what was going on at home. My mom was in and out of rehab a lot. I experienced a lot very young and always, then go to therapy. And my mom had the wits about her to put me in therapy as a kid too. So I've been a lot of therapy, a lot of psychologists in my day to process. But it taught me how to assign like words to feelings so that I could articulate things. So that was lesson number one, starting probably at 8, 9 years old, maybe even younger. And learning, and again, by contrast of actually like experiencing this whole roller coaster range of emotions, of the highest of highs and lowest of lows, to then be able to relate to other people out there in the world. And so here, as I get older, there's these people going through these really terrible experiences, and I'm crying with them, or I'm like happy tears. I was a date to a wedding of a guy I had been on like 2 or 3 dates with. I sobbed at this wedding. It was borderline embarrassing, but you could feel the love like oozing from these people and their loved ones. And it's like, I can't control it. Just like you can't, I mean, you could choose to stop listening, but the worst of the worst would happen. Like I could choose to stop feeling, but what's the point in that? So anyways, I didn't know at the time. So it started out just being emotional. And so that's why I can sit with someone or work with a client and they will tell me their story, but I can feel I can feel what they're feeling, but I can also feel if maybe they're a little off base. We need to like maybe dig a little deeper or think about something in a different light or whatever. So it's sort of like consulting, counseling in that way.
Gotcha.
And then it's becoming.
So hang on just a second. Let me have clarity around this. So you're not only feeling, so do you feel what they're feeling? Mm-hmm. So you have to decipher between your own feelings and their feelings.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it feels differently. And sometimes they pull, this is where it gets a little gray, but they trigger the feeling that I have felt. Like I don't want to say I have felt all the feelings out there in the world, but I have felt, I have to tell you, lots of loss and despair, and also lots of joys and wonderful things too. So it's like something will happen and it will bring me back, and I'll even sometimes get a flash of a memory, and it's sort of spirit reminding me to go back in that Rolodex to say, do you remember when this happened? That's how they feel. And sometimes if I'm in tuned enough, and that's how it started. And now I'm almost connected to source so much at that the middle step of pulling in the Rolodex doesn't need to happen anymore. I can literally just connect with them by sitting with them or being on a Zoom call or a phone, whatever. And
because it's energy. And energy is and always has been, and it doesn't have to be just in person. It could be
okay. Absolutely. So that's how it started. And that's how I just thought, okay, this is how I receive. Well, now it's starting to be where I'm picking up more on people who have crossed over. I told you I've seen, I've saw energy, and when I say that, I mean, like I would see silhouettes in doorways. I would see, shadows in corners. I always felt like I was being followed. And I just thought I was a scared little kid. I also thought oftentimes this happened at night. I thought I was dreaming. We'd have weird things happen in our house, like electronics turning on and off, whatever, but it only ever happened when I was by myself. So I just kind of thought, okay, electricity waves and stuff, like they just happen. I don't know, science, right? I had no idea that it's because I'm literally like, if I've got all this stuff happening around me all the time. And it wasn't until I met other people that could see auras or whatever, that I would meet them and they'd be like, whoa. And then they would tell me things. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then I start to pick up more and more on it. So that's come into play, and it's sharpening. And then the analytical thing, like I said, where we're removing that step of the Rolodex where I have to like dig back into the Leah human experience and recall that. And it happens, you think it would happen and take a minute, but it's just instantaneous. It's just, electricity in my brain. But anyways, now it's becoming where I can just I just know, like I see someone and I'm like, they're having a bad day. I always tell Grant, I can tell before you hit the driveway if it's been a rainy day or a sunny day. Like I just know. And so I know that's probably not terribly helpful for somebody that's trying to study these things or to learn about the different techniques or modalities in which people use, but it started off being one thing, and now it's really getting really sharp.
What I have noticed from working with several hundreds of women and a few good men, that the thing that, so like you had mentioned, feeling your emotions was almost a bad thing, or it was the butt of the good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, that's your gift. Like, that's the thing that you are to utilize in this lifetime. And so I relate that to myself and then to others, that like, I am here as this angelic presence to speak about pure love and to teach people how to listen to their own divine guidance. That's literally why my soul is here. And the thing that drove me to almost ending my life was not listening to my divine guidance.
Right.
So it, like, by me ignoring the thing that I'm supposed to be doing led me so far away from where I am. So it's like, I am so, like, for you and for others who are more emotionally connected to the divine, is like, maybe that is your thing all throughout your life, was that you felt a lot of emotions, or you could feel people, or you understood people in a different way, or you had taken on a lot of emotions, or you, however you were explaining, I'm trying to paraphrase your own words, but like, the thing that you had most resistance to was the thing that will bring you the least amount of resistance.
Right. It's like going full time with my business. I went from, I said, a very stable, steady, on paper, glamorous job to, direct sales, which can sometimes have a negative connotation, or, I'm doing in-home parties, and I'm doing, sales-based things. I have a team I'm sponsoring, all these things that I was like, that's not what I thought I was going to be in life. I don't want to do that. And it's not that it's bad. That's just not what I expected, but it was bringing me a lot of joy during a really dark time. And if you look at the specific company that I am working with, we are empowering and educating, uplifting people in ways that no one out there is doing. And I think, as especially 2020 really shined glaring lights on holes in people's relationships with themselves, with others, especially romantic partners, even their children, and realizing how, there is really a holistic aspect to health and wellness in general. And if you've got a hole over here, let's say in your sex life, like, it does at some point affect your children. Like, you wouldn't think it, but it does, or it affects your ability to work with relate to your coworkers. And so anyways, that's really what I'm here to do. Is and I haven't shared this with you yet, that I worked with one of my, I guess I call her more of like a mentor. She does past life regression. So we got into some past life stuff, and it just all rolls up. And so it's like, I laughed through the whole time, because you just have to laugh when things are like glaringly obvious, and you're like, and she honestly doesn't really know me that well professionally. She knows my soul. So we don't talk about my work. She just knows my soul. So here she's getting into these things based on my chart, and based on my energy and my aura and whatever. And it's incredible. But she came right out and said, here's your soul contract. And my soul contract was literally to, quote, raise the vibration of the planet. Sarah, you're going to like die laughing. Raise the vibration of the planet, help folks get into alignment. And as a result, the more people in alignment, the more the world as a whole is in alignment. So that's what I'm here to be doing. And the more I embrace it, the more good things happen. So, and not just monetarily.
I just had to laugh because I have to allow you to get to that point.
I know.
I love you.
Yes. So anyways, so that's happened in the last couple of weeks, where I'm
that
like,
is so awesome.
Okay. So
that is so awesome.
Great validation.
So I feel like you covered, I was going to ask you, like, where do you think your divine guidance has led you? But literally you've talked about owning who you really are, now helping others in an intuitive way, starting your own business, having 6-figure business. Anything else you want to add in there with like where listening to your divine guidance has led you?
Yeah. I think it's really been a resource during really divisive times. I don't want to like dwell on all the BS that's going on out there in the world because everyone's living it and blah. But the notion that it's all one, the oneness of it all. And when you have that moment where you're like, wow, this is all connected. And I'm not just talking about, chronologically or the series of your life. I'm talking about how your energy affects somebody else who affects somebody else who affects all these people, and the what kind of the network of it all. That is really can be disturbing, but also is actually very comforting because I like to believe that there's way more positivity and good out there than bad. And so anyways, to me, that has been really reassuring during scary times. And yeah, the direction I see it going in, I mentioned that I'm really reclaiming my body. I've put on weight. I don't feel good. It's not even a vanity thing. My energy doesn't match, like my physical energy doesn't match my spiritual, emotional, the rest of me kind of energy. So I'm trying to now move in a way that feels good to kind of take care of that piece of the puzzle. And I'll always working on your own relationships and utilizing that. So that's sort of the direction I see it going in. And I start seeing the bigger picture. And I forgot to talk about higher self too. When you asked about the thoughts coming through.
Yeah.
How do you know it's divine guidance or whatever? Well, that's what I was hearing. It was like, I have three voices. I have my own thoughts that are really squirrely and random in case you haven't picked up by this conversation. I have these very distinct, succinct, almost like, I don't want to say demands, but like instructions of like, this is next, do this now. And sometimes it's not even full sentences. And then when I journal, it's this really beautiful, eloquent, like not even language that I use, that flows. And that is my higher self. So, and I know that because it sounds like a less nasally, more elegant version of me. And so those are the three. But anyways, what my point is as I connect more with my higher self, I see more the direction and the impact I can make if I continue, because every day is a choice. I might choose like, I don't want to be connected to spirit anymore. I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to do any of that, but I'm just going to go back to trying to, thinking about driving my car off the road or whatever. I know that to be true. So that's not something I choose to do. But anyways, I see now how impactful it can be to help other people. And I would invite anyone that, has that divine guidance and that ability. It does seem, and I still have my moments where I'm a little nervous to share that with other people because I'm worried about what they're going to say or think, or, I have this existing business at the time I thought nothing to do with what my gifts are. And I was worried I'd lose people, and I might, some people think it's a religious based thing or whatnot. But I invite you to just not be afraid to embrace it, because it really does. It's somebody needs it. If it's not you, do it for someone else. I find that to be true. I'm not great at holding myself accountable, but if somebody asks me to hold them accountable, I am right there. I am there to support. I am there to yell at them, like whatever they need, right? So just show up for yourself too.
Mm-hmm. So how can we connect with you?
Well, I'm on all the social things. So you can shoot me a friend request on the Facebook. I have a Facebook community with a lot of fun things going on in there. I'm in the process of changing that over from being called Leah's Pink Friday to Leah's High Vibe Life. So you can search for either and it should pop up for you. I'm on Instagram at PR by Leah A. And yeah, those are the major ones. So find me over there.
Leah's High Vibe Life. All right, for a Facebook community. All right, cool. I'll put some.
High Vibe Life.
That's awesome. I saw it, and it had like a pink neon light, like good vibes only or something. Yep, I was like, right. Nice. I've been watching Architectural Digest. Is that Architecture Digest? Something like this. And a lot of the Hollywood, LA homes have neon signs that they've like either some sort of handwriting, but they've like personalized these. And I'm like, oh, it must be a trend now. So when I saw it, I was like, Leah's right on point.
It is. I thought about buying that sign too. I was like, do I need this for my office? It doesn't really go with anything in my house, but I mean, if we're talking about energy, there's nothing like hot pink neon sign, good vibes only, flashing at you all day, every day, to remind you of what you're here to do, honestly.
And hot pink is your thing, right?
Pink is one of my colors. So it's a healing color, I think. And I see in colors too. I didn't really get a lot of that, like, or feel in colors. I don't know. Like when I close my eyes and channel in, I see colors. It's probably angelic energy. And anyways, pink, greens are healing, blues and silvers as well can be healing, more of a protection. So yeah, that's another thing. I invite people to like watch what colors you're drawn to, because there's always reasons behind that.
For sure. I think it's awesome that I am drawn to certain colors, but I don't see auras. So like when people would say, oh, you've got such a something aura, I'm like, I remember someone says to me early on, like, you're such an old soul. And I'd be like, you're weird. So as you are waking up and you're listening to your divine guidance, take all of this information into account and then figure it out on your own. So
yeah, it's a buffet. It's a buffet. We present you with everything, because everything applies at some point or another, I would argue. But you just take the little bits and pieces that feel right to you, and you come back to the buffet, because I guarantee you start taking other things like as time goes on and things change.
Yes. If you want to know how to listen to your divine guidance some more, I have a free guide that I will be posting as well. And then if you want to take an e-course on learning how to listen to your divine guidance, I also have that. So much love to you all. And thank you, Leah, for popping in.
Thanks again.
Okay.